There are moments in life when, almost without realizing it, you find yourself in the game. A game where the pieces have no soul, where the objectives are not yours, and the moves you make are not guided by your essence, but by the expectations of others. A game that at first seems easy to play because the goal is clear, to please, to be seen, to be acknowledged. And then, as if by magic, you start to mold yourself, to be what others expect, to do what they ask, to act based on what you've been told is right. But deep down, you feel that something is wrong, don't you? You find yourself in constant cycles of validation, a like, an approval, a compliment, an external endorsement. Each word from the outside seems to fill a piece of an emptiness that deep down you don't know how to fill. And then you wonder, why does the opinion of others affect me so much? Is there something wrong with me? Yes, there is something wrong. It's not you. It's the game. You are trying to play by the rules of those who don't understand your heart, and worse, of those who don't care about your soul. You have been conditioned to believe that you needed validation from others to feel that your existence makes sense. And you begin to mold yourself, to hide, to abandon who you truly are in order to fit into what others want you to be. In the pursuit of approval, you forget the power of self-perception. You lose yourself in the external and stray from your own truth. And that's where the pain begins. What you realize, even if hesitantly, is that no matter how much external validation you receive, it is never enough. There's a persistent emptiness, like an inner hunger that is never satisfied, no matter how many accolades you receive. And then, you start to feel that something needs to change, that there is another way to live, a path that goes beyond the quest for external recognition. You start to question, what does it really mean to be successful? What truly matters to me? This subtle realization begins to emerge, and along with it comes the feeling that you're ready to find a new way of existing. True change starts here, at the exact moment you recognize that you need something more than approval, something deeper, something that is uniquely yours. As you begin to distance yourself from the constant need for validation, something within you starts to awaken. You confront a truth. The words you speak, the thoughts you have, the actions you take, often are not in alignment with your deepest values. You start to realize that true peace and satisfaction do not come from pleasing others, but from living in accordance with your own principles. You recognize that internal congruence, the harmony between what you think, feel, and do, is what truly brings fulfillment. There's no longer a need for approval. There's no longer a requirement to prove anything to anyone. The only test you now wish to pass is the test of your own truth. You no longer feel comfortable living a life that doesn't resonate with your essence. And this in itself is liberating. There's no longer a need to justify yourself. There's no longer pressure to show something that isn't real. Congruence becomes the key. You begin to understand that it doesn't matter what others think about your choices. What matters now is how you feel about those choices. You start to choose, no longer based on what others expect, but on what you believe is right for yourself. Gradually, this shift begins to generate an inner peace that once seemed unattainable. The emptiness that once existed, that feeling of losing yourself, begins to dissipate. You start to feel more whole, more aligned with your truth. What once felt like a burden, the need to be seen and approved, now becomes a distant memory. And you find yourself asking, how could I have lived so long without realizing this? Yet at the same time, you feel grateful for having arrived at this point, for having awakened to this truth that now sets you free. Living in alignment with your values becomes the greatest source of satisfaction. External validation loses all its significance. You realize that by living according to your own principles, you are creating a life that is more genuine, more authentic, more complete. And that, in itself, is a reward. What you begin to perceive more clearly each day is that true authenticity is not a quest or something you achieve. It has always been within you. It always was. It was just a matter of peeling away the layers that kept you from seeing it, of revealing what was hidden, perhaps even from yourself. And then, a new vision emerges. You start to realize that success, the true measure of fulfillment, has nothing to do with the opinions of others. Success now for you is being authentic, living your truth without fear, without shame. True freedom is living without the invisible chains imposed by others' opinions. Instead of comparing yourself to others, you begin to compare yourself to the person you knew you could be. Authenticity becomes your compass. Every step you take is a step toward your truth. And in doing this, something magical happens. Life begins to align in a fluid way. You start to attract what is truly meant for you. People, opportunities, situations that resonate with who you really are. Nothing feels forced. Nothing is an attempt to please. You simply are. And being you becomes the greatest success of all. You realize, after all, that true acceptance, the kind that really matters, comes from within. When you start to fully accept yourself with all your imperfections, mistakes, and virtues, the world begins to reflect that back to you. And when you live authentically, it doesn't matter what others say. You already find yourself complete within. This is the true measure of success, living a life in total alignment with your essence. And so the need for external approval, which once felt so strong and urgent, starts to lose its power. You realize that you didn't need others' approval. What you needed was to give yourself permission to live the way you always knew you could. And by doing this, you find the peace, satisfaction, and fulfillment you've always sought. Deep down, the only validation that truly matters is your own. As you move away from the constant chase for external approval, something begins to blossom inside you. And quietly, you start to realize that the true meaning of living does not lie in what others think of you, but in the alignment between what you truly believe and how you act. The feeling of being in tune with yourself suddenly becomes more important than any praise or applause you could receive from the outside. It's as if a soft light begins to illuminate the dark corners of your soul. You realize that you have spent many years following a path laid out by others, a path that seemed to be the right one because it met societal, familial, and cultural expectations. Yet, even with all these external achievements, something always felt missing, a sense of incompleteness. Deep down, something was telling you that there was something deeper, something more genuine missing. And you, at your core, knew that this something was connected to truly being yourself. This is the crucial point of transformation, the realization that true satisfaction does not come from pleasing others or following imposed standards, but from being true to your own values. You begin to realize that congruence is what truly brings peace. It's no longer about being accepted by others, but about being aligned with yourself. You start to understand that every choice, every thought, every word that comes out of your mouth has the power to reflect who you truly are when you are aligned with your values. And it is this alignment, this internal congruence, that brings true freedom. You begin to free yourself from the shackles of fear, shame, and judgment from others. For the first time, you feel the weight of years of external expectations lifting. With this, a new sensation begins to arise. It is no longer about pleasing or justifying your actions. It's about living authentically. Satisfaction no longer comes from fitting into a social mold. Satisfaction starts to come from within, from the feeling that you are being true to who you really are, without reservations, without fears. You become the architect of your own truth. What others think starts to lose importance because you know, with unexpected clarity, that it's not about what they think, but about how you feel and think about yourself. You begin to see yourself as a whole, integrated person, living in congruence with your values and your purpose. And when this alignment begins to solidify within you, the feeling of peace and satisfaction that once seemed distant starts to become tangible. Now you realize that true peace does not come from pleasing others, but from being authentic. You finally understand that true happiness is built from within, not from the outside. And the key to this happiness is living a life that is in alignment with what you believe is best for yourself. The journey toward this congruence, however, is not instantaneous. It requires courage. Courage to look within yourself and confront the truths that you may have neglected for so long. Courage to act in accordance with your values, even when the outside world tries to steer you off your path. But the reward for that courage is immeasurable. When you start to live in harmony with your principles, everything begins to align. What once seemed difficult and confusing now becomes natural. You start to live more fluidly, more peacefully. And it is here, in this moment of clarity, that the true transformation begins. Because living with internal congruence is much more than just following a set of values. It's about being true to your essence. And when you begin to live this way, a deep sense of peace settles in, because you now know that by acting in accordance with your values, you are acting with truth and soul. That is what truly matters. You've reached a point, haven't you? A point where recognition and external validation have started to lose their luster. And then you asked yourself, what is really important to me? What does success truly mean for who I am? And in asking this question, something profound happened. You realized that true success is not measured by the amount of applause or approval from others. True success lies in the act of being authentic. It is about living your truth, without masks, without embellishments, without compromising your essence to please others. Authenticity now becomes the only criterion for success that you care to pursue. No longer is it the success of pleasing others or being accepted, but the success of being true to who you are. And as you take this path, as you choose to live authentically, something incredible begins to happen. You start attracting what is genuinely meant for you. People, situations, and opportunities that resonate with your true essence begin to emerge. And most importantly, you start to realize that success is not a race. It is not a competition with anyone except yourself. It is not about being better than others. True success lies in being yourself. You now see the world with different eyes. Every choice you make, every action you take, is an affirmation of your commitment to authenticity. And by living according to your principles and values, you connect with an energy that is more powerful than any external recognition. You start to recognize that by being authentic, you are creating a life that does not depend on anyone else's approval. Satisfaction comes from within, and that is something that no one can take away from you. The feeling of freedom you experience now is indescribable. There is no longer the pressure to meet others' expectations. No more constant struggle to be seen, to be recognized. The struggle gives way to a profound peace, a peace that comes from self-acceptance. Because you now know, true validation lies in living your truth, and that is the only criterion for success worth pursuing. You realize then that your whole life has been preparing you for this moment, for this awakening, for this understanding. You see that you did not need others' approval. You never did. What you needed was congruence. You needed to live in alignment with your values, with your essence. And by doing so, external validation became irrelevant. Now looking back, you can clearly see that the search for external validation was merely a reflection of the lack of internal connection. It was a quest for something you already possessed within yourself, but had not recognized for a long time. And now, by living your authenticity, you realize that the only true validation is the one that comes from within. This validation does not depend on anyone else. It is already yours. By taking control of your own life, by living in alignment with your values and acting with authenticity, you find a type of success that is much deeper and more enduring than any external approval. Success now means being true to who you are. Success is living your truth. What you perceive now with clarity is that true freedom does not lie in being accepted by others, but in fully accepting yourself. When you stop seeking external validation and begin to live according to your essence, something inside you aligns. It is no longer about pleasing others, fitting into standards, or seeking approval. Now the only criterion for success is your authenticity. And as you experience this authenticity, something magical happens. You start attracting into your life everything that resonates with who you truly are. Supportive people, uplifting situations, opportunities that help you grow. The pressure to measure up to others' expectations dissolves, and the weight that once felt suffocating becomes light. Inner peace takes over because you know you are being true to yourself. True success, therefore, is not defined by what others think or expect of you. It is found in the courage to live according to your own values and to be consistent with what you believe. And that in itself is more fulfilling than any external recognition. Now you realize that living your truth is the greatest act of success you can achieve. The journey doesn't end here, it's just beginning to expand. And what lies ahead can only be discovered by continuing to walk this path of authenticity.